Hi, I'm Brandon Kane, General Manager of GreenStar Food Co-op. The COVID-19 pandemic has required us to find creative solutions to how we operate our organization, share information, and conduct our annual council election and bylaws amendment vote. While this is not our traditional way of conducting GreenStar's annual meeting for member owners, I'm hopeful this platform will allow more members to receive important information about GreenStar's operations, finances, and vision. In the midst of COVID-19 and with the opening of our new main store at 770 Cascadilla, this is a more critical time than ever for our member owners to be informed and involved. I'm optimistic that we'll gather in person again, as we have so many times before, to reflect on the past year and celebrate our successes ahead. GreenStar tends to be a very dynamic cooperative, and while I never lack for interesting information to report to you, nothing compares to the events of the last 12 months. Let's start by briefly reviewing how we got to where we are now. Our cooperative is deeply rooted in resilience and determination. We began in the early 1970s with the need to access fresh, local foods. If the supermarkets of that era were not going to supply this for us, we're going to make sure we got it somehow. This same drive pulled us through the internal political struggles during the 1980s and had us literally rise from the ashes in 1992 when we lost our storefront to arson and relocated to our present West End store at 701 West Buffalo Street. This relocation was made possible thanks to the direct support of our membership. We subsequently enjoyed a 20-plus year run during which we added our DeWitt Mall location, large production kitchen, event space, and eventually our Collegetown store in 2016. Going back to 2011, we endured a perfect storm of sorts with a major stock market crash coincided with the rapid expansion of natural foods in conventional supermarkets. In a matter of a year or so, cooperatives across the country went from enjoying consistent and sustainable growth in a comfortable niche market to having to compete with multi-billion-dollar corporations aggressively funded by private equity. Natural and organic foods suddenly be found everywhere. I remember how strange it was one day to find a cooler dedicated to kombucha at a rest stop in the middle of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. This heightened state of competition has obviously remained the status quo ever since. But we endured this existential threat, as we have others before, by demonstrating that we are living and breathing our mission in a way that our competitors can only hope to imitate. GreenStar, along with our sister cooperatives throughout the world, is about sustaining our community and the land which we reside. We support the local growers and the makers of the foods which nourish us. We ensure that those who work for us are cared for and compensated on a level unheard of in an industry that's notorious for providing as little to its employees as it can possibly get away with. Cooperatives do not strive to make as much profit as possible in order to enrich a select few owners or board members. Our wages are fixed, and we need only enough to operate at a level of profit to perpetuate ourselves and invest in our future. In a world that clearly needs to re-examine business as usual, cooperatives are a beacon showing us an alternative way of doing business. We're enriching our communities rather than extracting from them. And this understanding is what's inspired our membership to feed our growth year after year as we adapt to our ever-changing landscape. Here are some exciting metrics from GreenStar's 2019 operating year. Over $8 million in sales was attributable to local and regional businesses. This is over 1/3 of our total sales. Compare this to conventional markets. They talk a good game about local foods, but in reality, only an average of 2% of conventional chain sales are attributable to local businesses. The grocery industry operates on incredibly slim profit margins. The average annual net profit after taxes is only about 1.2% of sales. As a result, supermarket corporations do all they can to lower their operating expenses, focus on keeping employee compensation as low as possible. On average, conventional grocers spend only 14% of their sales on employee compensation, most often falling to the required minimum wage. Currently, that's $11.80 per hour in New York State. By comparison, GreenStar's lowest starting wage at this point is $14.28 per hour, the living wage amount set by Alternatives Federal Credit Union. GreenStar's compensation was about 22% of sales in 2019. Add to this paid sick leave, paid vacation time, and health insurance, and you can clearly see that your dollar goes a whole lot further with GreenStar towards the quality of life for our employees. Cooperatives are steeped in idealism, so we strive to not only care for the people in our community, but also for the environment that sustains us. 100% of our electricity that runs our stores is provided by local solar farms. In 2019 alone, we eliminated about 600 tons of greenhouse gas emissions as a result. Our new store at 770 Cascadilla is heated by a gas-free electric heat pump system, which happens to be solar-powered. A little bit about the grocery industry in the US and how GreenStar fits into it at present. Consider this. Supermarkets in the US total over $650 billion a year in annual sales. The largest player in this is Walmart, and they account for about 30% of sales, more than $250 billion per year. Natural Foods annually accounts for about $47 billion of grocery sales. In 2019, Whole Foods reported about $17 billion in sales, Aldi $30 billion, Wegmans $9.7 billion. In that same year, GreenStar achieved sales a little over $22.6 million. And although we're part of a national federation of cooperatives, we're essentially an autonomous and independent entity. With our next largest competitor over 1,000 times larger and funded by private equity, the tale of GreenStar is truly akin to that of David and Goliath. The present West End store produces about 80% of our annual revenue, but it's severely constrained by size and infrastructure. Our present retail floor is less than 15% of our total square footage, and these constraints severely limit our ability to serve our market. As you'll see when we review our 2019 financial report, the overwhelming majority of our annual sales go to the products we sell and the wages and benefits we provide to our employees. After accounting for our overhead expenses, we make very little profit. Historically, that profit's just been half a penny on every dollar. More recently, our annual increases in expenses have outpaced our ability of our stores to generate enough income to cover those expenses. Thus, we've reported a loss for the last couple of years. Our relocation to 770 Cascadilla Street is the long-term solution to this problem. The premise behind our relocation is to grow our business to meet our market's needs without proportionally growing our expenses, setting us up for long-term financial solvency. I'll talk about our exciting relocations shortly, but let's first review our 2019 performance. Bear in mind that these statements have not yet been audited by our accountants. An adjusted 2019 financial report will be shared with our membership as soon as it's available. Sales growth was flat in 2019, just 0.2% over 2018. This is testimony to the limitations of our current retail structure's inability to meet our shoppers' needs for product line breadth and competitive pricing. Total sales for 2019 were $22.6 million. About $500,000 was given away as discounts at our register. About 60% of our sales goes to the purchasing of products, what we call cost of goods, that we sell in our stores. Another 28% of sales goes to wages and benefits. You can see quickly how $22.6 million drops to a profit margin of $2.1 million after subtracting just discounts, cost of goods, wages, and benefits. With the remaining profit margin, we still need to cover all of our other operating costs, and think of this as everything from utility bills to copy paper to gas in our vehicles. Operating expenses accounted for another $1.9 million, leaving us with an income of about $171,000 before accounting for additional non-operating expenses such as taxes, amortization, and depreciation schedules. The lion's share portion of non-operating expenses is attributable to depreciation of our assets, half of which will be written off as a result of our move to 77 Cascadilla Street. As a result, we posted a net income loss in 2019 of $272,000. This loss was anticipated in our projections for the period prior to our relocation. The culprit of this loss is not in the depreciation schedule of our equipment or practically any other of our expenses that you would generally expect in a grocery business. There are three major dynamics here that resulted in this loss, two of which are remedied by our relocation. One is flat sales growth, and the second is the sharp rise in personnel expenses prior to our relocation. Again, 770 Cascadilla will bring these two expenses into homeostasis. For example, a relatively small amount of growth of sales of 2% in 2019 would have resulted in an additional $1 million in sales or $400,000 in profit. That would have brought our net income above $100,000 rather than in the negative as we're reporting for 2019. Our ideal compensation as a percentage of sales is about 20% rather than our present 22%, leaving us in the future with an additional 2% of sales to cover operating expenses and result in a consistent profit, which would be distributed as a patronage refund to our members in future years. The third contributor to this loss is right at the top of that income statement. As you can see, GreenStar gave $500,000 away in registered discounts before we knew whether or not we were able to afford to do so in 2019. I hope this explanation clarifies that the resizing of our operations is necessary to ensure the long-term success of our cooperative business. The income statement is over the period of time, but only for a year. Through our relocation, we are actively engaged in a plan to remedy the short-term losses. The value of our assets and depth of liability increased significantly as we took on the ownership of equity at 770 and the associated loans as well. As a result, the value of our assets jumped almost $1 million from 6.8 to 7.8 million. But the compelling story here is how by the end of 2019, in just a year's time, our member equity jumped from $1.1 million to $2.7 million through our membership investment program. At this point in time, GreenStar members have contributed over $2 million to our campaign for the new main store at 770 Cascadilla Street. Your commitment and faith in our cooperative is overwhelming, and I promise you we are equally dedicated to GreenStar's success and a return on your investment. That covers my review of 2019. Let's move on to the two major remaining topics of review: our new store and the impact of COVID-19 pandemic has had on our co-op in both the short and long term. Construction began in early 2019, and in just a little over 1 year's time, we're in the final stages of moving into our new home at 770 Cascadilla Street. Our updated flagship store is resized to finally be able to meet the needs of our community. Our new parking lot has 150 spots compared to our present count of 58, and features enhanced ADA parking, electrical vehicle charging stations, and a beautiful, spacious sidewalk and pedestrian promenade at our entryway, shielded safely from vehicle traffic. Our major equipment and shelving is installed and operational, and as you can see, GreenStar is beautifully appointed throughout its interior. The retail floor is approximately 16,500 square feet. This is triple our current West End location, but less than half of standard grocery store in the US. I like to think of it as the Goldilocks size, just right. Large enough to provide the full service of a one-stop shop, but small enough to keep an intimate hometown co-op feel. We're currently hard at work on our expanded product line. Of course, there'll be more of what you have come to know and love from GreenStar: high quality, fresh, natural foods, with an emphasis on local and sustainable choices. That'll be found in every aisle. Additionally, our resized scale of operations allows us to deliver a level of service and competitiveness that just isn't possible in our smaller store formats. We know that our prices have kept a significant portion of our community from shopping the co-op for years. The truth is that it simply costs more to pay our employees well and invest in our sustainability efforts. Naturally, this cost has to be reflected in the prices you see on our shelves. However, the increased volume in sales at 770 will allow us to have more elasticity in our pricing. I'm committed to ensuring that every category within our new location has a low price option that is equal to or better than our local competitors. We are well on our way to opening for business in May, but the world is rife with uncertainties and delays, and I can't commit to a set operating date just yet. I can tell you there's a dedicated team of GreenStar staff literally working around the clock to get this store open for business as fast as humanly possible. We're also busy sourcing an expanded international product line, as well as carrying affordable everyday household items such as batteries, kitchenware, and over-the-counter medicines, all in an effort to ensure that GreenStar is your new favorite grocery store. I'm deeply committed to making the cooperative economically accessible to our entire community. I'm betting on the idea that this marriage of values and affordability will bring about a revolution in our local economy. Please join me in this dream and support GreenStar moving forward any way you can, anytime you can. Now I want to address GreenStar's pandemic response and its impact on our future. In just a matter of weeks, our collective reality was overturned by the onset of the global pandemic. Suddenly, grocery stores found themselves in the position of being one of the few essential services staying open to serve the public in the midst of this crisis. We had to act quickly to keep our staff and customers safe while ensuring we were able to get nourishing food into the homes of our community members. It hasn't been easily achieved, with recommendations and mandates from CDC and both state and federal governments rapidly changing and occurring on a regular basis. Naturally, we needed to implement these recommendations within our operations as quickly as possible. From the start, GreenStar led the way in providing funding in order to protect our employees' income. We added several weeks of additional paid time off, bonus pay for increased risk, which was the equivalent of at least $2 additional per hour worked. We instituted additional cleaning protocols and employed social distancing measures in our stores quickly. This has been well received by the public and staff. We continue to monitor and deploy public health recommendations as fast as possible, and we're encouraging people to follow the guidelines provided, recognizing that the new normal of social distancing and infection control practices are new and strange to most. We haven't executed everything perfectly, but I'm certain in hindsight, we'll be able to say that we put the time, money, and effort into making sure we're able to provide these protections to our community as safely and fairly as possible. The prolonged conditions of this public health crisis have most certainly had a significant and long-lasting impact on our operations. As I stated earlier in this report, our sales prior to the onset of the pandemic were flat over prior year. As concern over the announcement of the pandemic spread, GreenStar experienced a massive spike in sales over the course of just 2 weeks, resulting in an additional $400,000 in sales over current trends. Now, keep in mind that 60% of these sales is the cost of product, so we actually achieved an additional $150,000 in profit over this 2-week period. We immediately committed the surplus profit to additional paid time off and bonus pay, which I previously mentioned, to support our staff through this crisis. Then, as quickly as our sales initially soared, they dropped equally below budget. There's no sign of substantial improvement in the near term. As I deliver this update, our last 2 weeks of sales combined are $340,000 below budget. We're currently losing a substantial amount of our limited cash reserve on a weekly basis. Even with the opening of our new store just several weeks away, GreenStar can only sustain a few weeks of significant cash loss before it would approach fiscal jeopardy. And so, our leadership team was faced with making quick and difficult decisions to reduce some aspects of our operation to stop this loss of cash during this period of reduction in revenue. One of these decisions was to temporarily close our DeWitt location. Another was to offer voluntary layoff package to all of our staff members, organization-wide. My hope is that this will get our operating expenses to where they need to be during this period prior to building back our business through the opening of 770 Cascadilla and the return of an adequate level of revenue. We'll continue to implement cost-cutting measures where applicable and reasonable. We're also actively working on building additional equity. This includes applying for federal relief funding and ensuring we receive the appropriate tax breaks when we file our taxes this year. Our GreenStar team is also working on rolling out online ordering and curbside pickup program. Our goal is to be able to offer curbside pickup at 770 in conjunction with the opening of this location in May. I know many of our members would like to see this program offered sooner, but I ask that you be patient and understand that the logistics of creating such a program require resources that are stretched thin with our sheer scope of our current operations. I believe that we'll be able to expand operating hours of the West End sometime soon in order to allow for more public shopping hours. I absolutely expect our sales to pick up as we open for business at 770, but it's likely that we'll not reach our full capacity for quite some time as we navigate how our new store will need to continually adapt to our ongoing safety measures related to COVID-19. For instance, we won't be able to offer cafe seating, the children's play area, self-serve bulk foods, in-person educational classes, or hot and cold or salad bar programs in our stores for the foreseeable future. Safety protocols requiring store shopping patterns and customer limits will be the norm for shopping in our stores for an undetermined period of time. Even though we'll not be able to open at full capacity, I can assure you that we'll be able to deliver a cooperative shopping experience far beyond what you'd come to expect from GreenStar. I can't thank you enough for your perseverance and your support for your hometown cooperative. Your commitment inspires us all to keep pushing forward. A new era for our cooperative is right around the corner, and I can't wait to be there to share it with you. Thank you.